Like this does a little bit, it just kicked in, but you can hear it, but it's really literally doing nothing. And the truck is just continuing going down the road. I'm still in 10th gear. It has not downshifted. Still not. Now I'm on the brake. And now it starts to downshift, but it's not gonna bring me to a stop. So anyway, that needs to be improved, like big time. Look at it go. Okay, on the brake. Hard on the brake. Downshifted down to 6. Still speeding up. 3,000 RPM. On the brake again. Hard on the brake. Well guys, you know that old saying that some days you should just stay home, stay in bed, or whatever. Today's looks like it might be turning out to be one of those days for me. Nothing terrible happened, no damage to the equipment or nothing like that. But man, it's just been a runaround. I don't even know what time it is right now, 10:30, 11 o'clock, something like that. And I've got really nothing done. So my plan was to take this up, drive this up, Brady take up the 350, start that clearing job, and then me and Brady come back together after it's been cutting. But Bauer woke up this morning, he was coughing quite a bit, so that changed that whole plan, because you got to shift stuff around when things like that happens. So now I've got a few hours where I can head out and do a few things, and I want to get this truck up to John. So John has a slip tank, he's got some tools, all that stuff on site for the job in the valley. So my plan was to hook up the flat deck triaxle, which is down there, hook that up to the Ram, throw the Chev on back, go up, and then unhook when I get up there, hook the flat deck up and come back with the Chev, and everything's ready to go. I also have to have this trailer ready for Trevor for tomorrow morning with the 550, so I'm keeping all that stuff in mind as well. But it wouldn't work out. I measured the tires, and the tires would fit in between the wheel wells, no problem whatsoever. The running boards are pretty tight on the wheel wells, but when I pulled forward where it's a tilt deck and the front 4 feet stay, it just kept wanting to tilt down before my back wheels could get up on it. So that scratched that plan. So then I said, all right, well, I got to change this all around. And now I went up and got the 450. I'm going to throw the Ram on the back and then come back with this, unhook this, get this hooked up to the 550, ready for Trevor for tomorrow morning. And the Ram is quite a bit lower than the 450, especially with the bigger tires on it. So that was a nightmare trying to get that hooked up, but right now I'm ready to lower it down the ball, get the Ram chained on, and get on the road here. In this midst of all this, I dropped my coffee on the ground. My book where I keep track of all my hours and all that sort of stuff, that fell on the ground. Anyway, we're soon ready to get this thing on the back of the trailer. I got to put some fuel in this thing. I wasn't planning on taking this truck, so I haven't even cleared the snow off it yet. Yeah, of course everything's on a timeline, right? Yeah, all right, well, I'm out of breath, just running around, switching trucks around, hooking up trailers, unhooking trailers. This trailer was actually hooked up to the Ram, and if I would have known all this, I could have just brought the 450 down, threw it on the back of the trailer with the Ram, and headed on up, and then switched trailers up there, and I would have been probably pretty much up there by now. Anyway, I know now that in order to use that, I got to get some ramps on the back, just because it won't, with the tilt, it just won't really work the way it is. Well, about 3 hours behind schedule, but we're hooked up, ready to pull on out of here. So one last obstacle left is getting out of my driveway. So that's another thing that makes me excited about getting the other property geared up, is that it's actually a slight downgrade going down to get out. This is pretty steep right out here at the end, and you can't really see if cars are coming. So 4-wheel drive, the hill is slippery. All right, well, here we go. Yeah, look. from one slippery road to another. Now, yesterday I hauled my 95 up with the Ram, so we're at like 30,000 pounds. Right now we're at trailer's 8. Truck almost has 6,000 pounds of payload. So the truck is like 8,500 pounds. So that's 16,500. We got the fuel tank on back and chains and stuff. So let's say we're at 17,000 pounds. So a little better than half of the weight that we had yesterday in the Ram. Obviously this feels light. The Fords have a ton of power, like a ton of power. No issues there whatsoever. But the exhaust brake is actually weaker feeling with 16,000 pounds behind it, or you know, let's say 17,000 pounds behind it, than what I find the Ram feels like with 30,000 pounds behind it. So that says something. We're on the road and she's not the best right here, but once we get on the highway, we're good to go. Of course, the second I pull out, there's a vehicle comes behind me. Like this is not a busy road really at all. And the second I pull out, a vehicle pulls out behind me. I do have to say, on the highway, this truck is so enjoyable to tow with. Like, once this truck hits the highway, it is just awesome. The adaptive cruise control, because this guy in front of me has been speeding up and slowing down now for the last, I don't know, 15 minutes. I haven't had to touch the brakes. I haven't had to touch the gas pedal, nothing. I set my distance that I like, and the truck just does its thing. It uses the trailer brakes if it needs it. The power is just unbelievable. Like, this guy was down to 80 kilometers an hour here a while ago, and I know I'm basically on flat ground right now, but I was cruising in 10th gear at like 1400 RPM, 1300 RPM in 10th gear, and the truck just does its thing, you know, whatever, no big deal. So I mean, if you could, with this 10 speed and with the power that this truck has, and I know everyone says that the Ram makes low-end torque. Technically, in numbers, the Powerstroke makes torque at a lower RPM, peak torque, than what the Ram does, from everything I've read. And you know, your butt dyno, this thing just pulls harder. It does. Like it can hold its gear, and this is 430 gears, so that obviously helps. But it's got the 265 tires on it, so that does not help. But this 10-speed, this updated engine from 2020 and on, it's a whole nother animal, like it is. And then they got the new engine coming out with 1,200 foot-pound of torque. Like, that thing is just gonna be nuts. But if you don't feel comfortable or as comfortable stopping, what's the good of the extra horsepower and torque if you don't improve the exhaust brake or the engine brake, whatever you want to call it? When I'm in the Ram and I'm coming up to an on-ramp or an off-ramp, sorry, I don't even really have to touch the brakes. The truck realizes that I'm not accelerating, my foot's not on the accelerator, and it just uses the exhaust brake, and then the transmission shifts down. If I pull off on an off-ramp in this, unless I touch the brakes, and usually have to touch the brakes a couple times or hold it for a little while, the truck doesn't kick in the exhaust brake, and it doesn't, well, it might, but it doesn't really do much, but it doesn't really like shift down with the idea to bring me to a stop. It just kind of lets the truck continue. With the Ram, it will literally bring you to a stop. By the time that you get up to the stop sign and you're turning left or turning right, you're basically already at a stop. And if you have an empty truck or an empty trailer, look at that 10th gear just pulled that hill. You don't even have to touch your brakes, which is awesome. So like Ford, you guys have some pretty crazy engineers. You can come out with all these high torque, high horsepower engines. Why can you not figure out how to make that exhaust brake as good or better than the Ram? The only one that's worse is the Duramax. I use the Duramax, and that thing, like, you might as well not even have it. I don't even know what the point of that thing is, to be honest. But like, this does a little bit. It just kicked in, but you can hear it, but it's really literally doing nothing. And the truck is just continuing going down the road. I'm still in 10th gear. It has not downshifted. Still not. Now I'm on the brake, and now it starts to downshift, but it's not going to bring me to a stop. So anyway, that needs to be improved, like big time. They got this wicked transmission. It shifts so smooth. This wicked engine. It's got so much power. Like, just figure it out. All right, so just a little more on this topic, and then that's it. I'm not going to beat this up too bad, but trust me, I'm not the only guy that mentions this stuff. If you watch basically every video of anyone who's honest, they'll tell you that the Ram exhaust brake is leaps and bounds better than the Ford. And there's people that won't buy the Fords because of that. There's people who like everything about the Fords better, but they'll take the Ram every time. It might be slower, it could be even harder on fuel, the transmission shifts rougher, and they'll pick the Ram because of the confidence that it has in going down hills and around grades, all that sort of stuff. Like Sam, V-Belt and Son, before he bought his 5500, he had full intentions of buying a 450. I think he was even going to get a 450 single cab. And when it came down to it, he test drove, I think, Tow Piglets, and then he drove I'm an Operator. He drove his 3500 with a little more weight on it, and he ended up buying the Ram because the Ford just felt sketchy to him going downhill. Just the transmission and the truck and the exhaust brake and all that didn't work in sync as much as what the Ram did. So he chose the Ram. And I mean, there's been quite a few videos that TFL Truck have done going down the Ike Gauntlet with the 2019s and up, especially the 2021 they did, hauling 30,000 pounds going down the grade. They didn't have to touch the brakes once. The Ford did 4 or 5 brake applications. The Chev was like 9. They didn't have to touch the brakes once. He literally put the adaptive cruise on, set the speed, and down they went. Didn't have to touch it once. So like, that's easier on your truck because you're not using your brakes near as much. It's easier on your stress level if you're hauling heavy weights. You got that confidence that the truck's just going to do its thing. On slippery roads, you want to be touching the brakes as little as possible. You want the truck just sort of going downhill. The second you touch your brakes, hauling heavy loads, it's game over because it starts to slide. It's not going to correct itself. The truck weighs way less than what we're hauling with these trucks. You don't want that. You want the truck just to pick a speed, go down the hill, just do its thing. That's what you want. Now that's a mulcher. That is a mulcher right there. That is an old Komatsu with a huge FAE mulcher on it. Alright, so here we are going down South Mountain. Yesterday we sped up to about 85 coming down here with 30,000 pounds. Look at it go. Okay, on the brake, hard on the brake. Downshifted down to 6. Still speeding up. 3,000 RPM. On the brake again. Hard on the brake. down to 5th. Yeah. Alright, so if I wanted to, I could manually shift that down, you know, the whole way, 6th, 5th, whatever. But man, I shouldn't have to do that. I should not have to do that. Now, when it comes to accelerating, the power, torque, and the smoothness of the Ford, no comparison. Can't even feel those shifts. Like, you can't even feel them. If you had your ears plugged and you weren't looking down at the tach gauge, you would have a hard time knowing when this thing shifts, which is pretty impressive. Like there, it just went an 1/8 and nothing. Like no loss in power, no loss in torque. It's one thing with the Ram, only where it only has 6 gears, is when you do speed up, or when you do upshift, it does lose some of its momentum because the gears are just so much further apart. But this thing, it just pulls. But yeah, all right, we're coming up to this crazy steep switchback turn here. Now we've got a little more than half the weight we had on yesterday, and I just let the Ram do its thing. I gotta look to see if anyone's coming, and I don't see anybody. So the Ford actually dug down pretty low. So it dropped down to 3rd, and we're not losing any speed whatsoever coming up here. Like this is crazy. So the Ford did way better, but again, I mean, 17,000 pounds is a lot different than 30. If I was coming up this hill all the time and I wasn't recording videos, I would be manually shifting the truck to make sure that it's in the gear that I want it to be in. I wouldn't do to the Ram that I did yesterday. All right, truck is unloaded. Now we're heading down. So let's see how this thing does compared to the Ram. Right now it's holding itself back pretty good. Not bad. Starting to speed up, but not bad. I'd be going this speed anyway. Fourth gear. Picking up now, and I gotta make this turn. I just find, like, you gotta hit the brake like I'm still on the brake. You gotta hold the brake so long for the truck to realize that you want to downshift. Anyway, let's head her on back to the South Shore. Well, that is one dirty truck. All right, well, trailer's joining his brothers. Okay, so yeah, the point of the video sort of to start out with was just, you know, things aren't going good, whatever, just keep going at it. Don't get discouraged, keep going. And then it really ended up being about the Ford and about what they really need to improve. In my opinion, it's the only thing holding them back from really taking over the dually hauling market. There's always going to be guys that just want the Cummins. I mean, it sounds fantastic. The engine brake sounds fantastic. You know, the truck sounds all right, but there's just something about the Cummins for sure. But there's always going to be those guys that just want a Cummins because they just want a Cummins. So they're going to continue to buy the Ram. But as far as performance-wise goes, to the true person that just wants the best product out there, the best all-around product out there, that's really, in my opinion, the only thing that's holding these Fords back, especially where you got the 450. It's in a class of its own with the wide front axle, the heavier brakes, the 19.5 tires that come standard, because the tires don't last long on those 3500 and 350s when you're hauling the kind of weights that I do. The 430 rear end, you know, the bigger axles, all this sort of stuff. The 450's in a class of its own. So you throw a really strong engine brake in that, and the transmission just knowing what you want it to do, it's unstoppable. I think it's unbeatable. You couldn't beat this truck with the transmission acting like the icing and that engine brake. This is my opinion. All right, folks, that's enough. That's my thoughts. You know, honestly, I gotta tell you that 3 or 4 years ago, I was not like a not like a Ford guy, but I definitely would defend Fords over Rams hands down. In longevity, I still kind of think that maybe the Fords might be a bit better, just because I know what I've done to my 350 and my 550, and it just keeps going, especially my 350. So I'm never gonna hesitate to buy a Ford, is I guess what I'm getting at. But if I had this and a Ram 3500 dually sitting side by side, and I had to take that load, you know, like one of my excavators, 30,000 pounds, and I had to drive an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever, in all different sort of road conditions and stuff like that, I'd take the Ram. I'd take the Ram 10 times out of 10. And comfort wise on the highway, acceleration, everything, the Ford is amazing. But just not knowing what you're gonna face on the road, I feel that the Ram does a better job of handling the load compared to the Fords. I just said it, can't take it back now. But anyway, that is gonna do it for this one, folks. I hope you enjoyed the video. I try to be as honest as absolute possible. I have no ties to Ford. I have no ties to Ram. I have no ties to anybody except for myself, my family, and my own business. And whatever makes sense for me is what I will continue to do. But that's it. So until next time, take care, stay safe, and we'll see you then. Bye.